Akin go? Ben, Jen? Jen's new home?
To my first guests.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers. Little kick, right?
Yeah, at the end.
That's good stuff, boy. Ooh.
Oh, that's much better than the sock sake.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, sake has its points.
No, it doesn't.
That we could still drink it even though it's terrible.
All right, keep going.
You want water?
So you were saying,
Oh, I think that's when everything started to come into play for me, where I was thinking about violence and where we think that violence is a negative. And that the fact of our culture, of who we are as humans, everything from our evolution was always evolved through violence. And when we look at creation, and creation at the beginning was created through a violent interaction. So it doesn't mean that violence is negative, it's just that we interpret it as being negative. And what we do with it is wrong. How we hurt one another, the way we do things. Instead of using it like when you sit in front of another person, you're standing in front of another person, and they're both challenging you in a different way than trying to kill you or murder you for something that you have. But really to help improve your skills, to help improve your movability, your coordination, for whatever it is. And at the time, of course, everybody starts, I think, the martial arts for the same reason, among other little things that could be insecurities, this, that, and the other thing, but it's really to protect themselves against violent acts. Unless you're young, then it's more of a competition. But then again, it's still to protect yourself from the bigger kid that's picking on you in school and how to deal with that situation. We're always doing these acts of violence against each other. Real violence is different. You could take a 5-year-old kid or an 8-year-old kid and put a knife in their hand and have them go crazy, and that's a violent situation. That's a tough situation to deal with because they're just pure and they're coming at you like a crazy person, and you have to stop them. And it's even worse, I suppose, from a person that really has intent in murdering you. There's a difference when somebody says to you, I'm going to beat you up, to somebody says to you, I'm going to stab you, or I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to murder you. And that's the kind of martial arts that I try to teach. I try to teach real life situations, but the real life situations bring you closer to understanding who you are, not about challenge in the sense of competition challenge, which has its place, But martial arts was never really meant for that. It was meant to challenge another individual standing in front of you to really practice the meditation by using one human being against another human being, and to understand and unwrap the mysteries of creation within the self. The world, or the universe as we know it, was created through a violent act. That violent act brings me into the philosophy of that things are created through violence, are understood through violence, opening up to what it really represents. Violence is a negative if a person breaks into your home and murders your whole family to get money or to prove a point or to take another person's body. But violence also has its creativity. And in the beginning, the most violent act of creation was at the beginning. And that's when it comes into the concept of creation, of where our minds come in and how we're attached to that. And that's where it comes into the philosophy of individuality. Like living in this world the way that you would like to see the world be, and projecting that self into the world. To me, that's God. When you have a violent act of imagination creating itself from nothing, it spontaneously created itself through the act of violence, but positive violence into creation. It's just that we misconstrue what that violence is, and we look at all violent activities and we project violence as a negative. But real power comes from the understanding of what the violence represents, the internal creation of what that violence can create as an individual and as a race. It seems that the only time that we ever really create anything or of significance used to be through wars, through acts of violence. I think now, it's time to change that and really use what that violence is truly representing, creation within the self. Because to create within the self, to understand the self, is an act of leaving your comfort zones. It's an act of violence. It's an act of creative violence, as opposed to negative violence, which eradicates because it wants something. But creative violence is constantly moving. It's constantly exploring. It's constantly growing. So in the beginning, say with the Big Bang, when the world or when the universe or whatever this may be, imagined itself into existence. Think about that. Where you came from. No, like it imagined itself into existence. So you are a part of that imagination. You are a part of that exploration of self. So yeah, it's kind of sad that I have to teach people how to protect ourselves from other people when we should all be living together and everything be cool and learning from each other. But that's the challenge of it. That's where people live through their fears, or they get over their fears through having more understanding and control of themselves, in a violent situation. But more than that, no matter how good you may be, there's always somebody better or luckier. It's a state of mind where you are in that violent situation, or when violence happens to you, even if it's at the point of your life being taken. Where is your thought process? Who are you? And what is actually happening as an individual or as a human being? So violence brings out the creativity within ourselves. We have to go through the different stages of consciousness. You have to build on an old, but you also have to move out of that old, and that's usually a violent act within the self. It's not easy to move from one level of thought concept to another, and to keep moving. Never to get locked in or become stagnant and say that this is a fact. Always to be able to evolve and move on. To me, or what life represents is living. Like the universe to me is alive. Like it's a living consciousness. And that consciousness, we are a part of it. It's not that we're separate from it. It's how we expand within ourselves that brings God to life within our world. The whole concept of God, I think, has become misconstrued because of our fears. And God is a creative energy within ourselves that it expresses through us. Therefore, the creation of God, or the creation of the universe, God is a thought.